I'm Jack Rutberg, and I'm delighted to present this body of work for an exhibition that is entitled Hispanic Legacy. It continues this year's extended exhibition of Art A to Z, which really showcases for an audience our vast collection, the breadth of what we are interested in and dealing in. It's a great opportunity for collectors and art admirers to be introduced to works available for their consideration. Hispanic Legacy came to our thoughts in that it followed National Hispanic Month, and it prompted me to look into our collection and see how that reflected in our holdings. So here we have an exhibition that speaks to the European, the Spanish specifically, influence in Latin America, and we're delighted to bring this exhibition to light. It's not your typical exhibition that's curated where works are sourced out, but it really reflects works that are in our holdings. So with that limitation, we bring context to the things that we already have, and it's context that charges a work with significance. When we look at our works at home, they serve a great decorative value, but it's connections that charge it with significance. Here we have a work by Alfredo Ramos Martinez from the mid-30s. And Ramos Martinez is an artist who actually went to Europe and actually in Paris, and absorbed the work from everyone in Europe, from Giotto to Cézanne. But he goes back to Mexico and rediscovers, in a sense, the elemental aspects of his own culture, and was the founder of the open-air school. The open-air school was populated by people like Siqueiros, Charlot, Diego Rivera himself. And so Ramos Martinez is really the founder, in a sense, of murals and what we know today as the great aspect of Mexican art. Ramos Martinez spent a great number, the last years of his life, in fact, in America. This work from 1938 is actually drawn on the Los Angeles Times classified ads. It became an aspect of his body of work that's most desired, and he has, in fact, murals throughout Southern California. This work has an incredible provenance, in fact, because it belonged to the collection of the woman who was responsible for his greatest mural, the 100-foot work that was the final work of his life before he died. And here we have an actual fresco by Ramos Martinez. It's a small, perhaps study, perhaps not, but a small work for a large mural that we as a gallery actually had the opportunity to have the entire wall in our gallery some years ago. In this 1935 work, of course, when we speak about murals in Mexico, they have their origins too from Spain, with the notions of the human condition, which Diego Rivera, Siqueiros, Orozco made so famous. And in terms of speaking of provocative works on the human condition, going back to Spain, we see the works of Francisco Goya, whose Disasters of War, and in this case we have two works from the Proverbios, where these rather absurd ironies and commentaries on the social mores and aspects of life are so profound. So in terms of profound works of social commentary, I think that we often underestimate the significance of a gesture, an image that isn't always something that is outrageous in a sense. No artist typifies the classic Mexican woman more than Francisco Zúñiga. His celebration of the indigenous woman was very provocative and reviled among certain individuals in Mexico. The same applied to Diego Rivera, to Ramos Martinez, who people wanted to elevate, in quotes, Mexican culture to something other than its indigenous nature. This exhibition offers two works by Francisco Zúñiga which will surprise any knowledgeable collector, admirer of his works. Here we have a work from 1940, a painting on canvas by Zúñiga. Zúñiga came to Mexico to be a painter. He worked in a foundry, earned a living trying to generate income. Ultimately, his sculpture became so much in demand that he had to abandon painting in around 1960 or so. So here we have a classic, rare example that has resided in a private collection for decades, and we're so proud to be able to present it for the very first time. It's hard to fathom that Zúñiga's monumental images of women, so poignant, so sensitive, could be reviled in a time when the indigenous woman was not to be celebrated. Here we have this remarkably poignant head of a woman by Zúñiga, red onyx, exceedingly rare. And again, we're so proud to be able to present things beyond what you might expect to see about an artist who we know so well. Here we have a classic image of Francisco Zúñiga, more recognizable to the kind of images that are well known throughout the world. This particular lithograph, here an original lithograph by Zúñiga, created in 1976, was actually commissioned by the Graphic Arts Council of the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, and is indeed one of the rarest works by Zúñiga in his print medium. Of this period, Diego Rivera, in this particular case, is celebrating this embroiderer. And I think it's really interesting how there's this almost suggestion of, well, it's more than a suggestion, this figure in the background standing looking at this embroiderer, almost as though culture continues with another generation. It's a beautifully done drawing and well documented, including the recent exhibition in San Francisco of the major museum retrospective of Diego Rivera in America. What I love about this exhibition is it also offers a range of medium. Here we have an original lithograph by another of the great muralists, David Alfaro Siqueiros. This particular work from the Mexican Masters series, which included Zúñiga, Tamayo, Cuevas, and Siqueiros. Another fascinating work by Siqueiros is this work, part of a series illustrating Pablo Neruda's poetry. And here we have a work that really echoes, in some respects, American abstract expressionism. Siqueiros was associated and worked with Jackson Pollock, but there's a calligraphic quality to this work which is so remarkable, and yet we see the kind of figuration, think in terms of volcanoes and landscape that Siqueiros was so famous for. An original lithograph by Siqueiros. We've spoken about the works of Ramos Martinez, another artist who worked at the open air school with Jean Charlot. He came from Paris to Mexico very early on in the century, and here we have two examples, classic examples by Charlot, who was instrumental in furthering the recognition of the murals of Mexican artists. Mexico has an extraordinary connection to magic and surrealism and mysticism. And now going back to Spain, we see a formative work of the surrealist movement, an incredible example, almost a retrospective of Salvador Dali. We see his melted clocks, the skulls, the harp, all these elements converging in one of the rarest graphic works by Dali, of which only a few examples even exist. The reference on Dali's works says 3 examples of this it's an etching, exist. The Museum of Modern Art owns one, and they believe that there are actually 6 examples known. So an artist who was wildly prolific, here we have the origins, and we see the genius that has inspired so much of surrealism today. In terms of surrealism, here we have the works of Roberto Matta. Matta, from Chile, went to Paris, and there he was introduced to the surrealists, ultimately coming to America during the war years. But through his introduction to André Breton, he was the youngest and really the last of the great surrealists to join the movement itself. In America, what many may not be aware of is that he was critical to the development of abstract expressionism. His association with Arshil Gorky, where Gorky was a pivotal force that gave birth to abstract expressionism, Matta somehow convinced Gorky to thin down his paint and create these beautiful fluid atmospheres. And here we see a kind of a playful aspect of Matta, where he's dealing always with the kind of social commentary about industrialization, population, automation, and pokes fun with these things in a kind of an extraterrestrial manner. So here we have an original oil painting by Matta. This is dating from 1972. And the exhibition also includes original graphic works. Matta was a very accomplished and prolific printmaker. This work accompanied works of poetry. This particular work, Les Automobiles, deals with this cataclysmic consequences of automobiles, and you see this work from that series, Les Automobiles. Among the surrealist artists, and to categorize artists so specifically as surrealists or cubists and so forth is never quite fair. I mean, was Diego Rivera a cubist? He was indeed. He evolved into different realms. Here we have a work by Gunter Gerzo, very much celebrated in Mexico, one of the most critical artists to transition from surrealism into this iconic structures that he created in his paintings, these kinds of stacked boxes, geometric forms. And here you actually see this surrealist aspect where these geometric forms create this kind of fantasy figure, this form, a painting entitled Tiger Tree Game, a surrealist game perhaps. It has a remarkable history as well as having belonged to the preeminent collector of surrealism in Chicago, and indeed was gifted to that collector, the Les Bloch collection, by Gerzo in 1957. Here we have this remarkable drawing by Matta, which really shows this beautiful, sensitive hand, where it's something of an outer space kind of a composition. Matta is a true surrealist who really sought other dimensions. And now back to Spain. We have here the works of an artist that this gallery has been so excited about presenting and featuring on different occasions, Jordi Alcaraz, who's a Catalan, and it's a rare opportunity to see something that is so remarkable and evocative. His works deal in this kind of surreal plane where process is critical. You are part of this process. The title of this is the first book of drawings. Now imagine an artist wrestling, or for that matter, anyone wrestling with the creation of a book. These are lines, inks that are trying to place themselves on a book, or perhaps breaking away. Jordi somehow captures this notion of creation, and we are part of this process. A true surrealist in so many poetic ways, And stay tuned for more about Jordi Alcaraz, but I encourage you to visit our website's video page to view exhibitions of Jordi Alcaraz. The work is hard to speak about, even more difficult to photograph, but something really worth discovering. In terms of Hispanic legacy, can there be a more impactful artist than Pablo Picasso, who has somehow informed virtually every artist in this exhibition in some specific manner? Here we have this extraordinary work by Pablo Picasso, La Corrida, and it's a work that we'll see informed in the works of even Cuevas, who we will look at now. And here we are with Jose Luis Cuevas, a remarkable draftsman, an artist of Mexico who sees a great deal of himself in the tradition of the great Spanish artists. In fact, he's the enfant terrible of Mexico for many years because he actually wanted to contextualize himself in that great legacy of Goya and Picasso, and frankly turned his back, in a sense, on Mexican art. That, of course, altered in his own development. But we see these shapes here, very reminiscent of what we saw in Le Picador. And we see this kind of Picasso-esque, this robust form. This is an original lithograph. This being a drawing, this is an original lithograph. And it, too, was from the Mexican master's portfolio. And, of course, we have here two paintings by Gustavo Montoya, very much admired and a revered artist of Mexico. This work of these two twin girls, and this beautiful painting of a boy carrying water, a very early painting by Montoya, and quite stunning. So in summation, Hispanic Legacies is all about connections. Connections between artists and periods and styles and countries. We know about the importance of European sensibilities that have informed Europe. But these Hispanic legacies have informed America in such a profound way. It must be remembered that so much of this history also deals with California. And California was part of Mexico up until the middle 19th century. At the time of when artists such as Manet working. So we're not talking about ancient history. This is a fluid history, and we're the better for it. I hope that collectors will rethink some of the things in their own collection, because it's context which charges these works with importance.